Hello, I'm Greg Rutke Mods, and welcome to episode 3 of season 3 of my PowerPC series. Now, today's episode is going to be another MDD video, but this is my FW400 MDD, which we first officially introduced in episode 20 of season 1, and this was also the system I overclocked to 1.5 successfully last season. Now, this system has already had one video card in it, but we're going to be upgrading it again. I upgraded it originally to my PowerMac G5 Radeon 9600 XT. It was modified and set up so the ADC would work and all that stuff. We'll show you that in the video. But the 9600 XT is just not powerful enough. So I had Collin Mistr, aka dosdude1, to custom make me a card. And he's been doing this for a few years now. He's finally perfected the formula. And the very first card he did a video on that you can watch on this on a link right up here, or here. I'm not sure which side it's showing up. This is mirrored, but you can watch that link. I'll show you where he was actually flashing that card. And that card was for Mark from Super Ice Cream Sandwiches channel, which you can also check his channel out, which I'll show you up here in one of these areas, one of these corners. But anyway, that video, he flashes a card that's identical to this one. It was one of his cards that he got, he I think said he got it at Goodwill years before, and he'd been experimenting with that card for years. And finally he sold it to Mark, and Mark put it into his PowerMac G5. Well, this time he flashed me a card. I bought one, I sent it to him, he flashed it, and here it is right here. We will be unwrapping it. I'll be telling more details about it and how he did everything. And anyway, so that's about all we need to talk about just right now, so let's get into it. Hey guys, it's about a day later since I finished filming this video, and I've decided to edit it a lot and add some more material. This video, forewarning, is going to be a little hard to follow. I'm going to try to fix the continuity of everything, but I wanted to change the path I was going with this card, but I don't want to refilm everything. So it's going to be a little more complicated than I wanted, but it's going to be a very cool video. This card, after having a lot of reflection on it, I think I'm going to keep it in the system, because even though you'll find out later in this video, and I'm cutting a lot of this out, so I'm going to explain it now also. This card, because of the way it is, the way it's made, Collin explained to me that the original card had an ADC to DVI switcher chip on it. And since PC cards don't have ADC, there's no switcher chip, and the ROM's designed for that switcher chip, so there's no digital DVI, none at all. You can only use analog DVI and VGA. So that's a bit of a problem, bit of a drawback, and you can't use Apple displays. So we will be using this 1080p PC monitor we have here. It's a bit of a drawback. I'd rather be able to use Mac displays, but when you see the performance of this card, it's incredible. There was a few problems with it when I was filming. I had to downclock the memory a little bit to get it nice and stable, and I'll cover more about that later in the video. I'm going to be cutting out all the what the heck's going on with this card parts of the video mostly. So it's going to jump around. I hope the continuity stays basically the same though. And this card, like I said before, I'm leaving in the system because the power is incredible on this thing. Later on, I'll be showing you it playing Quake 4 at full 1080p on all high settings. It's amazing. Now the G4 does hold it back a little bit. It will start stuttering and lagging some. It's not the card, it's the G4. But because of how powerful the card is, it takes a lot of the load off the G4, Plus, I have it set up to use multiple cores. There's an option in the menu for Quake 4 to do that. So even though the specs don't match up to what the requirements are on here, trust me, it's amazing. And we'll go more into that when we film that section. That's going to be the new part added into the video. And, you know, anyway, so let's get on with the showing you the card. Okay, so while we start out here, we have two cards here, as you can see right now. Let's first pull out Collin's card. Here we go. This is the card we're putting into the MDD. But before we talk about that, we're going to first talk about factory cards. Now, the factory X850, X800s and X850s looked like this. Apple originally didn't make the X800 as a factory card. In fact, they never really did. ATI sold these separately, and they look just like regular Apple factory cards with ADC connectors in them. Okay? But these were specifically only made for Power Mac G5s. And Apple eventually did make, towards the end of the EEPROM Power Mac G5, they made the X850 XTs as a build-to-order option for the very late AGP Pro G5s. They look, I think they look identical to this. I'm not 100% sure on that. But you know, they made an X850, and this is an X850. And if we notice, these cards are pretty different. Now, if you're looking over here, you got this connector here. This is an AGP Pro. This supplies extra power to the card, so all of it will power by itself in the slot. That's about the only thing difference with an AGP Pro versus a regular AGP. Well, of course, Power Mac G4s do not have AGP Pro slots, so you can't plug this card in. But this ROM is compatible with a G4, and that's where this comes in. Now, the X800 had a reduced ROM version, so you could flash it onto a PC card. Someone made it, and it worked. The X850, on the other hand, never did. The PC versions came with 64 kilobyte ROM, and to fit a Mac ROM on here, you need 128 kilobyte ROM. It's just a little chip. It's about that big, and it goes on the board. It's somewhere under the cooler here. You can watch that video on how he did it, and it explains it. But anyway, what Collin had to do is he had to take the ROM chip from this PC card and replace it with a 128 kilobyte ROM, and then he flashed it with a PC and put the Mac ROM on it. Very interesting video. You should watch it. But as we look at these two and all the things that are different, of course this has DVI and VGA, where this has DVI and ADC. Pretty different. I'm going to lose my ADC abilities, but it's not a big problem. And this was the most powerful card you could put into an AGP slot of any Power Mac ever. You couldn't get any more powerful than this card here. This card started its life out as a X850 Pro, and Collin flashed this to an X850 XT. XTs are just have slightly quicker clocks on them. That's the only difference, and he tested this thoroughly. It's stable, it's set up. So basically the only thing I got to do to make this work in the MDD, because he's already modified it for the 4x multiplier for the slot speed. Let's put this card back over here. The only thing we have to do is just plug it in, and then we'll need to supply power through Molex, which I already have a cable for that too. So let's just get into it. Okay, so I've been prepared for this card for a few weeks now. I've already got the whole case set up so it would work. Right now we have the 9600 XT in here, and we'll be replacing that. And I'll quickly show you what the 9600 XT looks like. I first showed it to you, I think, in my Quicksilver video in Season 1. That was like Episode 8. And went over it. Well, I ended up putting it into the MDD. And I've gotten a Molex extension cable here, which makes this thing all prepared. Okay? So first, let's unplug the SATA cable. Put it over here for now, and I'll make this try to make this a little neater. Okay, basically it's getting caught here. Basically we just need it to reach to right here and everything should be good. So here's the 9600. Let me grab a screwdriver here. We'll unscrew it. Now the 9600 is pretty good for basic OS X games. The AAA titles from later on would start choking out in this. But between the bottleneck and the G4 and stuff, this was a pretty good matched card for it. But now that this has the most powerful G4 you can get, basically, without it being an aftermarket card or playing with voltage and stuff, it's not as big of a bottleneck now. And so I want to actually be able to game with even more quality. So we'll be taking this card out right here. And as we can see my ADC mod here. Let's get it to focus. To get the ADC to work, you had to literally put another tooth in on the card. But other than that, this 9600 worked fine, straight out the box. If you didn't need ADC, I wouldn't even had to do that. And so I'll be putting this off to the side. I may put it into another system. I'm thinking putting it into the FireWire 800 for now. But, you know, it's still a good card. That's what's going to be put away for now. Let's grab the card that we're watching about right now, the X850 XT. Of course, like I said before, this started out as a Pro card, but now it's an XT and it's a Mac flashed card. So we'll set it down in a slot here. Let's see. And click. There we go. It fits in really nicely, as we can see here. Look at that. So we'll put the screw back in. And there we go. Now the only other thing we have to do is to take this, line up the pins, and just pop it in. And there we go. We have an X850 XT installed into the system, and everything should work great. Now I'm going to move everything over to my I'm calling service bay for now. This is my other KVM switch side here, which I plug into my main monitor. We'll be running it off the main monitor, but before we do all that, I want to plug it in and make sure the fan spins up on this and this still bongs. So let's do that. Okay, so we only have the power plugged in right now. I've managed to hook everything else back up though, so I can literally close the case just right afterwards, and everything should be good. Everything seems to be mostly out the way. Get the that out the way a little bit there. There we go. Now I should just be able to press the button. We should see the fan fire up, and it should bong. So let's see what happens. It sounds like it might just work. Now let's hook everything up and see if it really does. And that's where we are now. I pulled out my 1080p monitor that has VGA in it. And here we go. Everything's working. Everything works fine. We can go over back to About This Mac and look at everything. And go to Graphics and Displays. And here we go. Everything's working great. I'm 50-50 on keeping the card in the system for now, because I do actually use this system basically daily. It looks cool, and it's got a lot of gaming performance power now, but the lack of digital display is a little bit of a drawback here. But you know, let's at least run an open mark on here and see how it's working. So yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so we're getting ready to start the benchmark. I'm already seeing some problems here. I don't think this is as stable as we thought it was. So yeah, let's see. It might have just been a fluke. I did see some artifacting, but maybe it's all in my head for all I know. Alright, here we go. Now it is showing artifacts on this. I don't know why it's doing that, but it does seem to have worked fine. If we go over and compare this to my 9600 that it wrote over the file for, of course it did. Well, anyway, yeah. I don't know why it's showing artifacting, because the card seems to be fine, but it's working great. This score is actually, I think, the same score as my X1900. Around the same score as the X1900 that is in my dual-core G5 right now. So that's really impressive performance numbers there. I think my 9600, I can't remember the number to it. It was like 5,000 and something. So this is a vastly different performance here. So lastly, just for the heck of it, let's do a little gameplay, and I'll show you just how this performs in random old games. So let's get going. Okay, so the card is not working properly. Like I said before, he had technically overclocked it from a Pro to an XT, because when you flash it, any card, it's going to end up as an XT, because that's what the Mac ROM is. And most pros can upclock to XT speeds. This one doesn't look like it might be one of those. Here are the graphics settings. I can't set this to 1080p with this. For some reason, I'd probably have to hack some files to get it to work. But 1680 by 1050 is good enough to see it. This plays great, but the artifacting is pretty painful. And I'll eventually get this to... Oh!
The Landry Corporation's Unreal Tournament enters its 12th year as a legally sanctioned competition.
Alright, so we'll play a little gameplay here, and you'll see all the artifacting here. I'm playing with a single button Pro mouse, so this makes it a little harder to play.
Play.
But it is silky smooth. I think we're going to wrap this up after I kill her one more time. There we go.
Won the match.
But as we can see, if you look, even in the menus, there's a lot of artifacting. It is not running properly. But it does run, and it's, oops, sorry. It does seem like it would be a very great gaming card. I'm excited about that. I'll play around with it, maybe figure out how to get it to stabilize. And hey, it's kind of a win. Okay, so in the original video, I explained to you how I had to downclock everything to make all the artifacting to go away. Now, there's a way I can fix this, and I probably will fix it that way, but right now we're using ATI Accelerator to downclock everything so it runs fine. Originally, I had it downclocked to, well, the original clock is 1080. And I clocked it down to 1066 megahertz to run the Unreal Tournament 2004 that you guys will be watching in a second, or have already watched. I don't know where I'm going to put this into the video. But later on, I actually decided I wanted to play Quake 4, and Quake 4 showed me that it needed a little more downclocking, so I dropped it down to 1040 megahertz, and it works great. This is going to be the setting that I'm going to probably permanently set it to when I reflash the card with a PC. But other than that, I just wanted to cover that. That's what everything's will reset at from now on. And it still works great, which you'll see in a second when we play some Quake 4. Now, before we go over and playing Quake 4, I want to quickly go over the system requirements for this. So what we are going to do is first show you what the system requirements are. As we can see here, the system requirements says it needs at least a G4 running at 1.67 gigahertz. We've got a dual G4 running at 1.5, and we have the multiprocessor enabled, so that makes up all the gap there. It will still, you'll see it will bottleneck a little bit, but other than a little stutter, it runs great. And if I would set the graphical settings down a little bit further, probably just by turning the resolution down some, it wouldn't stutter at all. But I want to show you that this thing can play at 1080p. It's amazing to watch it play it. So let's get on to it. Okay, so I'm starting with the game save that I start with all of my systems when I'm showing Quake 4 performance. I'll show you quickly what the settings are. System 1080, high quality, and if we go into the advanced settings, everything's set out except for shadows. I don't know why that disabled again, but I'm not going to bother with it right now. It has reset everything. It is running on single core. That is weird. Okay, so we'll have to reset that. Set that back on. We'll re-enable shadows. Close. We'll have to restart the system. So, exit. Yes. Okay, so we're back. It should have reset everything. Let's go back to system. It's still set at high quality at 1080p. Go into advanced settings. We've got the multiple CPU core set up and everything maxed out and running. So we'll close that out and we'll go into gaming. Now, like I said, it will stutter a little bit. That's the G4, not the card. But even with the stutter, you know, it's still a playable game. And if I drop the resolution down from 1080p to like probably what is it? 1050 16, well, whatever resolution my cinema display runs at, it would probably run better. It'd even run better at a lower resolution. But I want to show you guys what 1080p looks like, so let's play.
Good point. Kane, hop in the cannon and see if you can't blow open the door to the access corridor. Lieutenant Boss to all squads. We're in business. Make a sweep of the Hannibal landing zone. Rhodes, do you read me?
Yes, sir. On the way, sir.
It's turning out to be pretty fun, I guess.
It freezes at the game save.
Heat shield is fully operational.
Switch to a better gun here.
Now passing through the stratosphere. Braking procedure has begun. Hannibal is now in the troposphere. Landing zone in sight. Our pleasure.
Roger that, Raven. A medic will be dispatched.
And there we go. There's some gameplay. And there was no problems whatsoever with the system. And to guarantee you that I'm not pulling any wool over your eyes, here are the specs. Let's move you in here. That is my MDD specs there. Power Mac G4 and the graphics and displays. There we go. So yeah, this is definitely awesome. And anyway, let's go on to wherever I am in the video, and we'll eventually wrap it up. So let's go. I have figured out why it was not working right. It wasn't because of the GPU overclock. It was because of the RAM memory overclock. So I dropped it down literally 1.25%. I'll show you that in a second, but first let's play the game again. As we can see so far, there is no artifacts whatsoever.
Play.
don't see him.
You have won the match.
Alright. If we look at the menu, we no longer see any artifacting whatsoever. And I'll explain to you why. Now there's a program called ATI Accelerator, which was made for OS X from Panther through Tiger, and it also works on Leopard, but I don't think it was actually designed for Leopard. We'll go into system preferences. I installed this, and this is actually purposely made to overclock any ATI card from the ATI Rage all the way through the X850. It doesn't work on the 1000 series or like the X1600 X1900s. It doesn't work with those, but will work up to the X850. And if we go over to my main computer over here, here are the speeds of the Pro versus the XT. And the memory clock speed here is 1000 versus 1080. The Pro is 1000. The XT is 1080. The memory on this old Pro card just could not clock up to 1080, which would be 540 megahertz on here. Of course, that's always doubled. So I clocked it down 1.25%, and that fixed all the artifacting problems. Now the only problem is I'll have to install ATI Accelerator on Tiger also, but that's just one minor teeny weeny drawback of the whole setup, and I could survive with that. Even though I'd love to have DVI, it's not a huge loss. Now, if you guys are considering something like this, the X850, for some reason, there's, as far as I know, no way to get DVI to work. After searching for more solutions and stuff, and Collin just basically said, you can't do it. So, if you want DVI and a high-performing card, the most powerful card I think you can go with is the ATI 9800 Pro. And they even made Mac-specific ones for 2 times also. So those cards even can come with just VGA and DVI. You know, so DVI will definitely work on those. You can get a PC flashed version and get it flashed over to a Mac with no problem. But in the end, even though I had to manually downclock it a little bit, the memory speed, it works. It works great. And even though it's limited to analog video, I guess I could survive with that. And hey, it makes this thing one of those most ultimate MDDs. So that's really neat. So anyway, this is actually the ending to the episode. Once again, don't forget to check out Collin's channel. And thank you guys for watching. This has been a Rutke Mods video.